You're listening to Views from the Jumpseat podcast. Bunker up, buckle in. It's time for the show to begin. One thing remains constant in the fire service is that we start day one in the jump seat. So if you're a chief officer, welcome back. If you're the day one probationary, welcome aboard. It's time for Jumpseat Radio. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Jumpseat Radio, the podcast that brings you the views and opinions of the backwards riding, street level, honk, honk, it's almost Christmas podcast. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're back for another round of Jump Seat Radio. No guests, no fluffs, no hype man. Hype man. It's just me this week, guys. So, sorry for the week off there. It was a great week in New York City. Headed up to New York City with the family, and we got a chance to go over to New Jersey and teach with the Revolutionary Fools. So a huge shout out to the Revolutionary Fools and everyone, basically everyone. It was the final class of 2018 as we get cranked up for 2019. I want to give a huge shout out to all the folks that brought me in and got a chance to meet all of you all throughout the year at the various conferences, whether that's FDIC Firehouse Expo, whether that's out in Missouri Winter Fire School, the Washington State Fire Symposium, or all the way the good folks up in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. It was a phenomenal year. By far the busiest travel year that I've had so far. It was definitely the busiest, but it was also the best. The Fighting Fires mission, the Fighting Fires and Hoarding Houses mission marches on into 2019. We've got some cool new stuff coming out. I'm working on an online version of the course right now, which we're taking a little bit of a break, stepping onto the microphone and talking about some podcasting, or doing the podcast today. And we're getting ready for 2019. 2019 is looking like it's going to shape up to be maybe better than 2018 as far as travel goes. Some of the tentative dates or the tentative locations we've got signed up. We've got a class brewing out in Portland, and first time to Oregon. Hopefully we get that one to come through. Headed out to Firehouse World in L.A. Los Angeles, the City of Angels. Pumped to get out to L.A. It will be my first trip to L.A., and I am pumped. Working on a trip up to New Hampshire. Got one in Vermont, Missouri Winter Fire School. Of course, FDIC. It's a huge honor to be selected for the 5th year to FDIC to present Hoarder Homes out there. So if we haven't got a chance, or we have not met face-to-face in a class, I'll make sure that we'll make sure to get our schedule, or my schedule, out on jumpseattraining.com, and make sure you folks, if you're in the neighborhood, I'd love to see you. I'd love to have a chance to interact, share stories, swap telephone numbers, and yeah. So what's today's podcast about, Ryan? Well, there seems to be a recent rush of young men and women that have reached out to me for advice on turning a passion into a profession. So most of us, or a lot of us, or a large number of us start off in the fire service as a volunteer firefighter. That's how I started. It's how most of the folks that I work with started out, volunteering in the local communities, which I think is a fantastic start. I always tell everybody that growing up in or around the fire station is an absolute amazing place for kids to grow and for families to come hang out. I'm very jealous of the family-focused volunteer fire stations around the country. I know that there's a lot in New Jersey. I know that there's a lot in Delaware. And unfortunately here in the area, it's more like just the men-focused fire stations, more like a service-based focus, less like a family-based focus. So if you get a chance to raise your kid in and around the fire service, of course, I think the fire service is phenomenal. But even if you get a chance to raise them in your community volunteer fire department, it's just that much better, because that firefighter or that young man or woman or boy or girl has so many sets of parents. I mean, you don't just have the one set of parents. You basically have the whole department. So recently I've gotten a bunch of emails, a bunch of text messages, and people asking for how do they turn this passion to serve into their profession. Well, the answer is you have to make your map. And I always tell the story of Chief Gasaway back in the day coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Ryan, what do you want to do with your life?" And it's like, "I want to be a career firefighter." And he said, "Ryan, you need to write down Ryan Pennington, firefighter, paramedic, blank, fire department, and post it everywhere. And then you've got to make your map. You've got to draw out how to become a career firefighter." So basically, I tell that same story to the people I speak with, to the young men and women who reach out and want to become career firefighters. So here's my basically, in a nutshell, how I guess it's like a generic, maybe a Reader's Digest version of how to get started and turning your passion into profession. Number one is you need to reach out and find departments that you're interested in becoming members of, whether that starts with maybe the FDNY, or maybe that's your local career house. Maybe that's the career departments in the state, like here in the state of West Virginia or the state of South Carolina, and start trying to figure out when they're hiring. So the tip number one is you would want to make a list. And I would rank them 1 to 10. All right, so my number one choice would be, let's say, Baltimore City. I want to go to Baltimore City. My number 10 choice would be the city of Princeton, West Virginia. Any of those 1 through 10 would be acceptable, but this is how I think I would rank them. And I say think because you really don't know what the department's like until you get in there. But as you make this list and you start this spreadsheet out, you need to start with the entrance requirements. So let's say that Department X requires you to be an EMT. Department Y requires you to be a paramedic. Department S just requires you to have a high school diploma. But on this spreadsheet that you make out and you rank your departments, you want to lay out what it takes to become a member of that department. And I always encourage firefighters who are looking to turn their passion into a profession to take as many tests as possible. I mean, take as many tests as possible, because you never really know when Department A is going to give the same test as Department B, and Department B is the one you want to be on. So basically, you just had a chance to take a free practice exam. So make your list, put the list out, and put their minimum requirements on there, and then start working towards those minimum requirements. All right? While doing that, so this is a simultaneous tip number 2, is you've got to start training for the CPAT, the Candidate Physical Ability Test, or Aptitude Test. Most fire departments use it. Not all fire departments use it. And this is a test that a lot of people train wrong for. And this is a disclaimer. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a personal trainer. But I have trained multiple firefighters for this test. This test only takes a small amount of equipment to start getting ready for it. I always recommend that people start with a 15-inch plyometric box. If you don't know what a plyometric box is, Google it, and you can either make it or purchase it. And then I always start off with either a backpack full of weights, a weight vest, or this last round we used a brute force sandbag. Train accordingly. So we want to start doing step up and step downs. And people say, well, Ryan, I'm going to start training for the CPAT and I'm going to start running. Well, running is not quite the same exercise as the CPAT. You need to climb stairs. Well, I'm going to go to the local, blah, 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 and I'm going to climb up and down the stairs. Well, that's fine. But you don't ever come down the stairs with the CPAT. It's all up, all up, all up. So what I recommend, and this is just as Ryan's recommendation, which I've gotten every person that I've ever coached past the CPAT, usually around the 9-minute mark, is to start doing step up, step downs. Right leg up, right leg down. Left leg up, left leg down. And you want to shoot for that 3 minutes and 20 seconds, which is the initial 3 minutes and 20 seconds of the Stairmaster. Start there, no weight. Add weight as you go, and ultimately you want to work up to being able to do it for a full 5 minutes with 75 pounds with the first 320, or actually the first 5 minutes with 75 pounds. That's why I prefer to use the brute force sandbag, because you can adjust the weight, just put it up on your shoulders and crank it out. After you go through that phase, you need to start adding pushing, pulling, lifting, dragging, and you can all do that. You can do that all either with the brute force sandbag or another human being But the main thing is you've got to get prepared for those stairs. 15-inch plyometric box, a brute force sandbag. If you don't have the money, just grab you a rucksack, a backpack, and start adding some weight to it with the ultimately the weight needs to be at 75 pounds. All right, so tip number 1, we're making a list. Checking it twice. Going to find out. Never mind. So we're making a list, ranking them 1 to 10, or finding out our individual requirements for departments. All right. Number 2, while we're doing that, these are simultaneous, we're going to start preparing for CPAP. Whether that's you need to lose 5 pounds, 10 pounds, or whether you're just the same, you need to start doing the plyometric box. You need to start working on pushes, pulls, and drags. So we'll get more of that here in a few minutes. But then step number 3 is you need to start preparing yourself for the test. I use the analogy that when you took the SAT or ACT back in high school, you prepared for the tests. So you don't want to go into these tests ill-prepared. So what I recommend, let's look it up here. And so what I recommend is buying a firefighter entrance exam study guide. And some departments, many departments, have their own study guide. So I know that our department offers its own study guide. So our department actually gives you a study guide of things to memorize and things to prepare. Before you get to that point, you need to get a book. And this is the book that I recommend. I'm not making any money off of this yet, although I should be, because as many of these books that I have sold over the years is ridiculous. But the reason I recommend this book is because it produces the best results in my opinion. It's Firefighter Exam Preparation Book, revised and updated. It's by Norman Halls. You can find it on Amazon for about $9.88. It's guaranteed methods to score 80 to 100% or your money back. Man, I like getting my money back. Every person that I've assigned this book to and that has taken it seriously has scored in the top 10. Let me say that again. Top 10 of the applicants. So this book is no joke. It is hard. Let me rephrase that. It is hard. I think, in Ryan's opinion, I think it's harder than most of the tests that you're going to take. So now, once you get the book and you start working your way through it cover to cover, you need to get through it anywhere between 5 to 6 times. You need to not memorize the test questions. You need to figure out how you test and how to make those test questions your thought process. Usually the way these tests go is there's 4 answers, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? We're going to narrow it down to 2. So A, B, C, D. A and D are completely wrong. We know A and D are completely wrong. But B and C both could be right. Which one is more right or which is most right? That's going to be up to you to use this book to start getting ready for that preparatory test. Remember, they're not testing your ability to be a firefighter at this time. They're just testing your ability to think, to take a test, and that's all you have to do is you've got to score competitively in that range of their hiring, whether they're hiring 100, whether they're hiring 1. These are very competitive exams, and you've got to put the time in. If you know that you have a deficiency in math, spend a lot of time on the math section. If you know that you have a deficiency in reading comprehension, spend time on reading comprehension. But I would encourage you to get through the book at least 5 times. And getting towards the end or getting ready for test day is I would sit down with a blank piece of paper and I would take their practice tests just like you're going to take that exam as you sit down to go take your entrance exam. All right, so tip number 1, make a list, check it twice, figure out what the requirements are, start working towards their requirements, whether that's a passport, whether that's to be an EMT, and rank your departments 1 to 10 on which ones you want to belong to. Start working towards those requirements. While number 2, preparing for CPAT. There's tons and tons and tons of YouTube videos out there. I would choose the ones that teach you to CPAT just with the plyometric box. When I trained my last recruit or last rookie to do it, we used the 15-inch, and we also used a 22-inch plyometric box, which the 22-inch ended up receiving a name that I cannot repeat on a censored podcast, but it absolutely gets you ready for the Stairmaster or the stair mill part of the CPAP. Tip number 3, the firefighter exam preparation books. Guaranteed 80% to 100% of your money back. It's the book you can find on Amazon for Norman Hall. You're going to start going through that book cover to cover, paying close attention to the maps section, the gears section, and then making up for any deficiency that you may have, whether that is a mathematic reading comprehension. And then the final Ryan's tip for the final tip for Ryan turning your passion into a profession is freaking put the work in. Let me tell you, these jobs are not easy to get, and they are not easy to keep. You need to start adding push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, squats, and eventually you will have to start adding some basic running to your mentality. But you can't give up. If you apply for Department A and you don't get hired, you don't give up. You go to Department B. If you can't get on Department B, you go to Department C, D, E, F, G. You may get all the way to Department Z before you actually find someone who has offered you a job. You may have to move, but you also need to adjust each time you go take a test. Let's say that you took the exam. You took Ryan's suggestions. You went and bought the firefighter exam preparatory book. You went and sat for an exam, and you sit down and you bombed it. You need to come home and decompress from that bomb. What part did I do well? What part did I do not well? And I'll give you an example. My first lieutenant's exam, I did pretty well, except for instead of getting up and walking away, which is the best test method for Ryan, is I sat there for 10 to 15 minutes and changed 10 answers. And without a question, those 10 answers, whether they were right or wrong, never should have been changed. So you need to find through preparing with this firefighter exam prep book what's going to be your best method. So don't sit there and second guess yourself. Don't go who, what, where, when, and how. You want to go in and say, this is how I'm going to take it. This is my game plan. And then once you get done, that's when you can adjust your game plan. Say, hey, listen, I left one question blank, and then I got screwed up, and that's something we can decompress after your first test. I would venture to say that most folks that I deal with, I know here in my local area and here on the East Coast, it takes about 3 or 4 firefighter exams to get hired. It really does. That needs to be your expectation. Or if you have an expectation that you're going to get hired first round, you might want to take that expectation and kind of squelch it a little bit and say, hey, listen, I'm going to go take 3 to 5 of these firefighter exams, and I'm going to get better each time, which is the secret sauce to turning passion into profession. The final thing I'm going to say is you better have your heart in the right place, because if and when, or let's just say when, you start in with your department and you go through your day shift, your training academy, we're going to push you harder than you ever thought possible. So you need to get in that mindset that this is not given, it's earned. And when you're earning it, it's going to be potentially one of the hardest things that you've ever done in your life. So while you're doing this preparatory stuff, you have to know that this is just the basics to get you through the door. Once you're in the door, that's when you have to earn it. And trust me when I say you are going to earn it. All right, everyone, that's it. If you guys are reaching out, or if you're looking to turn your passion into your profession, if you're looking to go from a volunteer status to a career status, you need to find a mentor if at all possible. I would reach out to someone in that department that you're trying to get into and try to make friends with them, and then ask them for suggestions. Find the people that have walked the walk, and that way you guys can start find the little hacks, if you will, to getting hired with these dream departments. So that's it. Short podcast for this week. Christmas is coming up. We've got the online hoarding class. I've been slaving away here in the Jumpseat Studios trying to get that out. So if you folks are interested in attending the online heavy content course, it will be available 11019. 1119 Jumpsuit Training will be launching its very first online course. Actually, it'll be the second version of it, but we're making the official launch. Super excited about it. And then if you guys are interested in hosting a hoarding class in person, the calendar is filling up. It's time to get your requests in now because it's going to be one heck of a 2019. Make sure you go over to YouTube and youtube.com/Ryan Pennington. Subscribe. Got some new video content coming out as well, so we appreciate all the likes and subscribes on YouTube. Head on over to iTunes and smash that 5-star rating for this podcast. And that's it for this week. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Jumpseat Radio, the place that makes things happen. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week. You've been listening to Jumpseat Radio, the podcast that should be your /1 ranked firefighter podcast. Head on over to iTunes, smash that 5-star button, leave us a comment, like, share, or subscribe through all your social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow us there, and get ready for one amazing Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas.